You ever stop and think, what does a normal day in science actually look like? I'm not talking about the huge, earth-shattering breakthroughs, but the day-to-day work of just finding things out. Well, we're going to do exactly that. We're going to dig into one single page from an old scientific journal and uncover three totally different, totally fascinating stories that were hiding there in plain sight.
All right, let's travel back in time. The date is February 25th, 1961. And this page from the journal Nature is basically our time capsule. This wasn't some special anniversary issue or anything. Nope, just a regular old Saturday publication. But when you look closer, it's pretty wild. On this one page, you've got scientists tackling everything from massive industrial puzzles to the microscopic world inside our very own bodies.
So, our first story kicks off with a question that had huge implications for industries all over the globe. It's all about that bouncy, stretchy stuff that was absolutely essential for, well, everything from car tires to the eraser on your pencil. Natural rubber.
Okay, so how does a tree actually make rubber? I mean, it sounds simple enough, right? We know latex comes from rubber trees, but how does the tree literally build that giant rubber molecule? Well, a group of scientists at the British Rubber Producers Research Association was dead set on figuring out the exact recipe that nature was using.
And the way they did this was just so clever. They suspected a certain chemical was the key building block. It's called isopentenyl pyrophosphate. So they took that chemical and made it radioactive. They basically slapped a tiny little tracking device on the molecule. Then they injected it into the trees and just waited to see if that radioactivity would pop up in the fresh rubber.
And the results? Whoa, talk about a home run. Get this, a whopping 98 to 100% of that radioactive tracker molecule ended up directly inside the finished rubber. This was huge. It meant this stuff wasn't just an ingredient, it was the ingredient. They had found the exact starting block for nature's own rubber factory. Okay, so while one team is figuring out how nature builds something super useful, literally, right next to their article on the same page, another team is trying to figure out how our bodies build something, well, a lot less desirable. We're jumping from the rubber plantations all the way to the surface of our own teeth to talk about dental plaque.
You know, back in 1961, scientists were still trying to nail down what plaque even is. And I just love the language they used in the paper. They called it a tenacious, felt-like cohesive film. That tells you right away they knew this wasn't just some leftover food particles. This was a substance with its own structure, its own properties.
Now, let's look at what's actually in this stuff. When they dried it out and analyzed it, they found something pretty surprising. Check out that top number, 40 to 50% protein. We always think of plaque as sugar, right? But nope, the main component is protein. It's like the scaffolding for a little bacterial city on your teeth. This was a crucial insight. Plaque wasn't just random gunk, it was a complex biological material.
And this is such a perfect example of how science works. You have to define the problem with precision. The researchers drew a clear line in the sand. Plaque is this organized, stuck-on film. It is completely different from all the other loose stuff in your mouth you can just swish away. You can't really fight an enemy until you know exactly what it is.
So far, we've looked at scientists figuring out processes they already knew were happening. But our final story from this page, well, this one's different. This is all about the pure thrill of discovery, of finding something completely new, something nobody had ever seen before, hidden deep inside a plant leaf.
I mean, just look at that title. It's not a question, it's a declaration. It's basically the scientific equivalent of a birth announcement. Researchers had found a totally new protein and they were introducing it to the world. They named their discovery plastocyanin.
And this wasn't just any old protein. It was special. For starters, it contained copper, which gave it this stunning, intense blue color. Super cool. But the real game changer was what it did. They figured out it was a key player in photosynthesis. You know, the process that powers pretty much all life on this planet. They had just found a brand new, essential cog in the engine of life itself. So just take a second and let that sink in. One page, one random day in 1961, you've got industrial chemistry, you've got personal biology, and you've got a fundamental discovery about the energy that runs our world. All just sitting there, side by side. It's amazing. And that, right there, is what science really is.
It isn't some single clean story. It's this beautiful, messy collection of countless questions, big and small, from how can we make better tires to what is this gunk on my teeth, all the way to, hey, what's this blue stuff inside a leaf?
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The science from that single page in 1961 is now just part of our everyday lives. It's in our materials, our healthcare, our textbooks. So, as we see all the big headlines today about AI and gene editing, what quiet little discoveries are being published right now on some random page in a journal, just laying the groundwork for the world of tomorrow?